Okay.
All right, guys, welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We have Tim Houk of the Houk Crew down in Louisiana.
That's
Tim has
right.
been a good friend and a mentor of ours for a long time. He's built a very good business. So we are going to kind of get an understanding of who Tim is first. So Tim, tell us about you personally. No business wise. Are you married? You have kids? What kind of man is Tim Houk?
Joe, thanks for having me. Tim is a 14-year veteran of the business.
14
He's
years?
also 14 years, yeah.
Okay.
Ex-military. I was in the Navy for 6. Thought it was going to be a lifer, and man, decided to get out and come home for a while, and still here. I'm married. Yeah, I've been married for 3 years to a South Side Chicago girl.
I
Yeah.
remember when you met that girl.
Yeah, man. I knew it as soon as I met her. It was a done deal. So did the best sales job of my life and convinced her to move to Louisiana. And we've got 3 amazing children. I have a 3-year-old and 2 I have twin 18-month-old.
All
And
right. Cool.
so
You're
it's
busy right now.
busy, man, busy. I'm we big into food and travel and experiences. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Cool. Awesome. So Tim, you got in the business 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, you solo agent when you got into the business?
Solo agent. I was doing mortgages, and I love telling the story because it's it's interesting. I started doing mortgages, and for 6 months, everybody would go to lunch, and so but there were a lot of inbound calls, and so I never took lunch. I'd stay and catch all the phones that were ringing while everybody left for lunch.
Nice.
And this is right out of college. And so I'm like killing it, right? 6 months in, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have like big number months. And I took a lunch, my first lunch in 6 months. And I came back and the doors were locked. There was a police car out front. And they said, you can come back tomorrow, get your belongings, can't take your files. And it was, the moral of the story is never take lunch.
Okay.
So
I
bro, I
guess.
mean, like, I think I'm still scared to take lunch. It's one of those
Yeah.
things. So, during that time, I moved over to real estate, and that's it.
Okay. So you got in the business as a solo agent. Now you have a team of 11 and you guys are
Team of
doing
11. Yeah.
you're on pace to do north of 300 units this year. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I look to people joining here right now, we have some people who are running teams. We have some solo agents and stuff like that. Let's walk through your journey really quickly. So you started as a solo agent. How many units did you max out with until you got an assistant?
And my first assistant in 2010. So we back up. So I was a solo agent. The next year I joined a team and we killed it, man. We were just doing great. 2007 was a blessed year. Which my first full year in real estate, well north of 6 figures, was doing a lot of investment type properties, multifamily and things. And here comes 2008. And it was a really one of the best business lessons I've ever learned. Was we were just blowing and going, right? I was on a team, we had no assistant, we're running, I felt busy, wasn't looking at numbers, and probably why I'm such a stalwart for knowing your numbers now. But looked up, man, we had a hurricane come in 2008 too, shut everything down for a few weeks. And the first 3 days I felt so incredibly like, I'm too busy, we can't be out of work. And after 3 days, I realized that I was doing busy work. I wasn't doing money making work. And
Right.
that's when I started going into analyzing all the accounts, all the everything. And it was October, September, it was August, and we were out of power till like September something. But I had made not very much money in 2008. Didn't understand what was going on. Was living off the money I'd been making prior, really. And went to my team lead and said, hey man, I really want to focus on one area. And he's like, me too. He's like, he wanted to go straight commercial and I wanted to go residential. And there's a copy of it sitting right over there, the red book. I bought that in September 2008 and said, I'm going to give this one good run in 2009. And if I do well, I'll stay. I had a job offer from Dell on the table in a military division in Austin, Texas. My team leader said I was crazy if I took that job. And it
Right.
was 6-figure offer. Yeah. And so I gave it a run, man. I became a student of the game in 2008. I studied the MREA, followed it, and 2009 in the worst market that we knew. Right, 2008 is when it hit, but 2009 was really bad. I grew,
Okay.
had a good healthy business, and I grew. I've grown every year since, for the most part. About healthy growth, 20-25%, just steady climb. Um,
So Tim, we have a couple people that we have some people joining our lunch and learn that might not know what the MREA or the Red Book is. So you dove into the book, what we call the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent.
yeah,
Okay. And you
it was
start
wonderful.
and from the beginning, Tim, did you start building your business to the models and systems in that book?
I did. And I wanted to skip steps. My team leader, great. I'm so gracious. She wouldn't let me. She's like, no, you're going to do it. If you're going to follow it, you're going to do it right. And she was a mentor of mine, and I just really respected her guidance. And so, yeah, I worked in 2010. I was putting in 7 days a week, typical real estate agent stuff, long hours, and just at that point knew that my quality of life wasn't where I wanted it to be. And so I knew I was at that point ready. I was like, okay, I'll make this leap, and hired an assistant
Okay.
in March.
So 2007, 2008, you're doing it for 3-4 years. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to follow the book and I'm going to hire an assistant in 2010.
Yeah. And
Okay.
granted, 2010 was still a bad market, brother. It was
Tim,
still
how many units or volume were you doing by yourself?
probably in the neighborhood 50, 40, 50 units in that
Yeah.
neighborhood, which is
So
doable.
you're working all the time, but you're doing
Yeah.
40, 50 units, which is
Yeah.
more than 3 a month, right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
it was just my quality of life wasn't there. I'm a little bit, I didn't start real estate till I was 31. And so if you working the way that I was working, I just knew that something had to change. And I was willing to trade a little bit of money for it.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was, as you can suspect, I hired that assistant in March of 2010. And by September, I really needed to make my second hire. I took bold.
Wait, so you hired your first assistant and then you had to hire a second one right away?
Yeah. So I made that first hire in March and just really committed to what I felt my obligation was to do income producing activity. Right. And so anything that wasn't income producing, I handed it off. And
What would you
bold.
define as income producing activities, Tim?
Lead generate, lead follow up, go on appointments, negotiate contracts.
Yep.
And so, in those years, I had to hunt really hard to get deals done. I had to hunt, and I had to go on a lot more appointments to be able to get a listing,
Mm-hmm.
because there was a lot of appointments I go on and they wanted to sell, but didn't have the financial means to be able to write a check at closing. 2010, we're still upside down.
Right.
And to get what I needed, I remember talking to 30 to 35 people a day.
Yeah.
So it was so, and then everything else, I would just hand it off. I was like, let's do this. And, come in and lead generate and make my calls and,
Okay. So let's pause that just because I'm looking at the audience here and I know some of these people's businesses that we're doing. So you made a decision and you called it, I made the jump. I made a leap of faith to get an assistant, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you knew that, hey, listen, I have to do these 4 activities, right? And everything else I'm going to give away.
Yep.
Psychologically, as us being business owners and entrepreneurs, how difficult was that, and how did you approach it? Because like I said, I know a lot of people on this call and they're like, well, I need to do it, right?
Right.
And if they need to do everything else, they're not going to do those 4 activities. So how did you decide to do that, and how hard was it to give those other jobs away?
It was hard when you're a control freak, like I can be sometimes. It was tough. Yet, I just knew in my heart that things show up in your life sometimes for a reason. And I made the hire driving back from family reunion over the telephone. That theme that year was leverage, leverage, leverage. And it was just, I felt like it was the message that was coming to me at a time in my life where I just needed to pay attention. And I made some calls, and which is not the way to do it, right? Just start making phone calls and find the first available person. Um,
Right.
I was fortunate that I knew this young man would work very hard, and so he came to work for me as an assistant. And he's actually, and the conversation went like this: "You're going to be a horrible assistant, but you'll be an amazing agent. And if you'll take this journey with me, and this is what it's going to look like, I'll do everything in my power to make sure you make $100,000 your first year in real estate." And I did. So that assistant is who became, one of becoming my buyer's agent. And 2011, he made, we hit that hurdle.
Your first assistant made 6 figures?
When I moved him into the agent role.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, man, I think I paid him $500. It was like flat $500 a week. I was like, I'll pay you $500 a week. It's what I can afford. But if you work with me, I'll get us here. And I broke out the book and I showed him what I was going to be doing. And he believed in me. And I think that's important because he was taking a leap of faith also. And so he just believed in my vision and what I wanted to accomplish. And, that young man is now running a big real estate team with Berkshire Hathaway, just out there killing it. And, his journey has continued to grow, and it's just been the most fulfilling thing for me to watch him progress as a great business person and a leader in our community. It's pretty awesome.
That's what it's all about, right? Is giving people an opportunity to then obviously see what they can do and what they could produce, and then see them grow, right? It's
awesome.
Beautiful.
Actually came back to Keller Williams last week, and we're he's been following the model since he left. He's still doing what we did back in 2010.
Right.
And and so that journey looked like, for that in March when I made that hire, I took Career Vision. I took Bold in July or August of 2010. And, I still kind of rub this in my team's face a little bit, but in September of 2010, I did 17 sides by myself that month. It was that month that I made the next hire. My world was, again, I have an assistant, and now I'm working, I knew that it was time to bring on more leverage. And so that's how the journey started. That was my second one. It came on in September. And
Tim, did you follow the model of two assistants? Are you still the only agent when you did this? Did you do two operations people?
Yes.
And did you follow the model that one was doing listing management and one was doing transaction management?
It was more of transaction and just, it was an assistant, lead assistant, and then the transaction management part.
Okay. So for the newer agents that are out there, the newbies, right? If they're thinking like, all right, hey, when do I need to get an assistant? Right. Or what does this assistant do? Or how much do I pay this assistant? One, it's their mindset, right? You're a big believer in leverage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then two, when would you tell somebody who's built this from the beginning to now going to do over 300 units, when would you tell somebody to look at getting your first assistant?
When you feel your quality of life is out of whack and your income is good. If your quality of life is out of whack and your income's bad, something's broken. You're spending too much time somewhere else. And so if your quality of life is out of whack and you're working a lot and income is good, that's when I'd say make that first hire. It's money isn't everything. And, we work really hard in this business, and you can get to burnout. And, we're the best versions of ourselves and for our families and our clients when we're not in that realm, And so I would say to that person, if you're looking to make a first assistant, if your life is out of whack and you really want to gain some of that back, look at hiring an assistant. And I would tell you, the world's changed since I started. No one would hire a virtual assistant back then. Now it's very commonplace. And I think that it can be a great stepping stone, but you as a person need to have the ultimate clarity, what you want to do and what you're not going to do. And a very good way of doing that is, the MREA, if you look on KW Connect, there's a Excel grid of the jobs you should be doing at every level of the game, level 1, level 2. But if you want to get really simple with it, write down a list of things that you just don't want to do. That can be write down everything you don't want to do. I don't want to handle inspections on. I don't want to enter listings. I don't want to, design graphics for my open house. I don't want to do these jobs. Write it all down, and that can be the basis of the job description for your first hire.
Right.
So you can be in the model and make it work for you. So there isn't this, oh, they're only going to do these jobs. Make it what you want. Make it, this is about your journey, and you're going to be taking someone in your world to bring them with you. It has to be, you have to keep yourself at the forefront. Have to be slightly greedy.
Tim, I have the benefit of knowing you for a long time, and I know how you approach this. But for the people who don't, the biggest challenge here is when we are talented people and we're not entrepreneurs and we're business owners and we go out there and do it ourselves. But we never really, sometimes we don't really approach it as a business. So when was your mindset ready of saying like, hey, I'm going to approach this as a business? When did that turn and pivot for you? Was it right away, or was it when you hired your assistant? When did you say, all right, I'm going to approach this as a business and run this as a business?
That for me was in 2008, because I had been on a team. We didn't have a CRM. We weren't tracking numbers. You read the Millionaire Real Estate Agent and they're talking about know your numbers. And yet I had been in a place where we were not doing that. And so for me, it was at the beginning. I was truly listening to those that came before me, and they always told me, run it like a business, treat it like a business. The IRS believes you're a business. So
yeah. Yeah. The IRS looks at you as a business. So
100%. And so you're a business person, each and every person, even if you're a solo agent, if you're an agent on a team or a solo agent, all the same in the eyes of the IRS. And so I think the mindset needs to follow that.
All right. So Tim, topic of the conversation is knowing your numbers. I know that you know your numbers like the back of your hand. I remember the first time I met you and you talked about, what is it? What is the tool you use?
CTE.
CTE. Yeah. And you had all your numbers in there. And I was super impressed of the knowledge of your numbers. So walk us through numbers. Okay. So remember, I'm looking at the audience here. We have some single agents here. We have some, we have some newer agents. We have some veteran agents. We have some teams. We have some big teams. So let's talk about numbers, and what numbers should people be focusing on?
I think at the beginning, you really have to start at the very beginning. You need to understand that real estate is a contact sport.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe, when we were prepping for this class, I gave you the extreme example. I was like, how probable is it that you went to talk to 1,000 people about real estate and had zero success?
Right.
And that's very improbable. And inversely, how probable would it be that you talked to 10 to 20 people and had massive amounts of success with sales? And the answer there would also be very improbable. And I always, I like to use that example is because the truth is it's somewhere in the middle. And an interesting number that most people do not know is that the average real estate agent, for every 100 conversations that you have, you're going to get 2 appointments out of that. This is the average agent. My team's average for the last 65 years has been 3.5. My average is just above 4%. And I have some that are lower. And so we have a blended rate. And why is that important? That means someone who's been in the business for 14 years, for every 100 people that I speak to, I go on 4 appointments.
4 appointments.
4 appointments for every 100 conversations. And I think it's relevant.
Tim, can I pause you there? Define speak to. Define speak to somebody. If somebody's going to want to build a business, and you're saying the first pillar to this is how many you want to start tracking how many conversations you have. Is this phone conversations? Is this emails? What does speak to mean?
Well, my organization would probably ask for a little more leeway and count texting and emails and Facebook messages. We do not count those. It is face-to-face or on the phone conversations with people.
Okay.
And, this is a relationship business. And, it's, you have to be doing those. The other things are in addition to, and that's just the way it is. Yes, you do have to be texting people, and yes, you should be Facebooking or whatever tools you're going to use, and those in addition to, but the trackable number needs to be is phone conversations or face-to-face.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. So a great, a lot of people will say, hey, Tim, if I can just hit 10 million in volume, right? Like, and my life will be great, right? Like I
Right.
just hit 10, I want to hit 10 million. So run us through the numbers on that. If my average price point is, you know, in the city of Chicago, let's just say it's 500 just for numbers sake. Okay.
Okay.
What is the first metric that I need to pay attention to? Are you saying it's appointments?
It is appointments, 100%, because without appointments, you can't sign a buyer rep agreement or a listing rep agreement, right? Can't happen.
Okay. So I'm a newer agent and I want to do $10 million in the city of Chicago. And my average price point, again, it might be high, guys, and I get that, is 500,000, but we're just doing it for numbers sake. How many appointments do I have to set? Or what's my target?
So that would be 20, that would be 20 properties sold. Okay.
Right.
And so you're probably going to have to divvy some of that up between buyer side and list side. I think it's safe to say that the average agent will secure 65% of the listings that they go on.
Right.
I'm sorry. They will secure 80% of the listing appointments they go on. Okay.
Okay.
And that's healthy. And that's a healthy number because NAR statistics show that only 70% of sellers only interview one agent. And so with that one piece of data alone says, if you can just be the person to get in the door, to talk to them about real estate, the first one, there's a 70% chance that they're not going to be interviewing anyone else.
Right. Right.
Just
a
get
pretty
the
good number.
Yeah, it's a great number. It's
Right.
a great number. And you know, and so that number right there just is my whole preface about why I think real estate agents have so much room to grow with their businesses. So yeah, you make the calls, get the appointment. So that's 20. And so let's just say that you wanted to sell 10 million listings, it'll be easier for me this way.
Sure.
Okay. So if you get 80% of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you would need to go on, let's see, 20. Probably need to go on what, 25 appointments?
Well, so yeah, so if it's 20 sales, right?
Mhm.
If it's 20 sales, and then we know that, again, if we use the NAR stats, it's 75% of those people, let's just use that, 75% of those people will work with you, and then
Okay.
70% of those will
Sell.
actually, 75% of those will actually sell.
Okay.
So that's 50%, right? So if we get 20 sales, we have to go on 40 appointments.
Yeah, 40 appointments. So you would do 26 and then basically 40 appointments.
Right.
And yeah, so you go on 40 appointments. The goal is to get on the appointment.
Right. So what you're telling me is the formula is do the activities, know your numbers as far as how many conversations you need to have, and then focus on appointments.
Yes,
right.
That's it. He who wins the best person at setting appointments will win this game. And it's not going to change. You know, you
Right.
can bank on marketing, but if we had and we'll run through this exercise later. If you've got $0 budget, what do? Pick up the phone.
Pick up the phone, right?
You get belly to belly. You build relationships. You know, anyway, we'll get into that later. But yeah, so that's your number one thing is just knowing what your ratio is. But there's a hidden item there, and the thing is that it's work. It is absolutely cleverly disguised as work.
Right.
If you're not honest with yourself when you wake up and get to the office and say, I'm here on a mission today, and my mission is to speak to X number of people or set an appointment to buy or sell, you haven't accomplished the mission for the day.
Tim, how do people do that? If I'm a newer agent and I'm like, oh man, I gotta go out with this buyer, I gotta, drop off this earnest money check, and my business is starting to take off, and oh man, I got all this stuff to do, right? Mm-hmm. And then Tim, who's built a business to do over 300 units a year, is telling me that I got to belly up and talk to 100 people, in a month or whatever, or in 2 weeks. How do I do that? What advice do you give me on that?
Time management is the number one. Is when I hire someone in my organization, and I sit down and I explain the mission and vision to them. So congratulations for being here. The hardest thing that you're going to do here is manage your calendar. And everybody kind of laughs every time. They laugh. I'm like, with absolute certainty, within 90 days, you'll come to me and tell me that that is true. And with certainty, it does. They come to me and go, wow, there's a lot. And it is a lot. If there's 100 things that we do in real estate, and there's many more, and it's allegedly 192, but let's say that, the top of those is to lead generate, lead follow up, go on appointments, negotiate contracts. And the fifth is, training, education, and pouring back into yourself. Where does the rest of that stuff fall? And it can fall in a time that's not the most important time. And so my morning to this day is still 8:30 huddle with the team, 9 o'clock on the phones, 9 to 11. During COVID, it is basically 9 to 12. Now, because I broke out all my journals from the last shift, I have all my journals. And I remember the hardships and what I had to do, and what I had to do then was a lot different than now. I remember how hard it was to make it all happen, and yet you still see home selling. We know that the best year in the United States, 5.5 million homes sell, right? And then the worst, there was still 4.2.
Right.
So you have to be out there doing the work. If you do the work, the results will come. With certainty, it's only going to be to what percentage of success.
Tim, you've always been a person that not only knows your own personal numbers, but numbers like that, right? Like, hey, 5.2, 4.2, things like that. Where do you study this? Where do you find this stuff that and do you time block to that of saying, hey, I need to know? And then also, after you go to that, which of these numbers do you find most valuable when you're talking to these people? When you're lead generating for 3 hours and you're having these conversations, what numbers do consumers want to know?
They want to know days on market. They want to know list to sale ratio if you're a seller. Buyers want to know where the good deals are. What can I expect any good deals right now? How low can we offer? What's percentage ratio? And when you have historical data and someone wants to offer 10% less, and you're seeing, no more 98% list to sale price ratio, it's easier to guide them into a place of reality. Now, you give them the advice, and if they want to submit the offer, so be it. But everybody wants a deal. But at least when they gets rejected, then they can understand why. Mm-hmm. For years, when I was in the beginning, when I was not educated enough, I'd probably lost a lot of clients. People were like, oh yeah, let's make that low offer, and knowing that it was completely unrealistic. And sometimes those people ultimately didn't want to buy in the house because they just felt defeated and rejected. And I didn't coach them well enough. I didn't have the numbers to give them. And, I was looking for solutions. There's always a problem. So how do we find the solution, and how do we find an answer? And numbers for me just seem to make sense. Okay. And so it's important. If you have a listing, you get an offer and it's maybe not where you want to be. And right now, I know our COVID numbers, showings. I know that our showings were up 14% this week. They were up 3% the week before. They were down 28% the week before that. And so, it's all this stuff. And so we get an offer, and the seller's like, well, and I was able to have a very educated conversation with them about the market, what's going on, and the reality that you may be 3 more mortgage payments before we get another offer. Perhaps we should take a look at this. And we secured the deal. It was the right deal for them. So it's, I don't know, man, so I do my reading in the morning, Joe, to answer your question. In the morning, I'm always on the lookout for articles. I listen to podcasts. A lot of that happens when I'm either working out, or I tend to get up at like 4:45 or 5:15, somewhere in that range. And on my calendar, it says my time. And that's the time before my family and gets up, and the dogs and the kids and everything starts. And it's where I just kind of go, what do I need to be looking at today? What's the most important thing that I can do today? And student of the game.
Yeah, Tim, you and I we come from the same, we're cut from the same cloth, right? And we live in that world where we wake up early in the morning and we do our miracle morning kind of routine and whatever, whether it's the actual Savers acronym or not. What about the people on this call that say, man, I'm not getting up at 4:45.
That's fine.
I'm not getting up at 5:15. Like I stay up late and I work all night and like whatever, and I'm getting up at 8:30. What would you tell them?
Hey, whatever works for you. It's easy to say, hey, just start getting up earlier, and you'll find that the most successful people in this business do get up early, yet there's tons of successful agents out there who don't. And you can structure your time. into what works for you. But I would say make sure you're getting plenty of rest, make sure you're eating well, and make sure that you have whatever time that you're using, you have your block set up. And if I can tell you that statistically speaking, you're going to have better results in the morning, making your calls first thing. You're going to have more energy. We haven't encountered big problems of the day, hopefully yet. Our energy is better. And so there's a scientific reason that we do that first thing. And then we have the rest of the day to handle appointments, problems, issues, contracts, dropping earnest mileage checks, all that other stuff. And if you're a night owl, cool. You know, I use that time wisely. I think if you were to do a time study, people are just, everyone wastes a lot of time, you know, really. And I mean, and you hear the silly example, right? You're about to go on vacation. How much do you get done the day before you leave vacation? You're like, right. Like you knock it out. You're so efficient. You get it all done. And when you take the best case scenario and the worst case in between there somewhere, we can all be better about managing our time. And so,
and Tim, that's being exposed right now, right? With the stay-at-home orders and stuff like that right now. I mean, my wife is like, man, I didn't realize how much you work. I'm like, right. You know, but we're efficient our time. You know, we're being efficient with our time. Okay, so Tim, you know your numbers, so you know what activities you need to do to set X amount of appointments, right? To get X amount of homes sold, which equals obviously volume, right? I was not exposed to this until the last couple of years, where I was always chasing volume. You know, like, hey, I want to do, you know, 10 million or 50 million or whatever. And the importance to this is that, hey, listen, if you want to sell 100 homes, 50 homes, or whatever it is, you have to set X amount of appointments.
Yep. So that's why I like the unit conversation better than the volume, because, you know, let's just say that we were going into slide into a recession, and then, you know, it's like, hey, I can't have a $500,000 average. Now I have a $200,000 average. You know, and so I think we can miss some things when we're going on the volume, but you know, it's the appointments, it's the contacts, it's the appointments.
Okay. Hey, I'm gonna go real quick to the chat room, so I get this question answered for Meg. Right. So Meg says that she's doing a client webinar with a financial planner on current market conditions. Okay, and that you came from the world, you know, you're a numbers guy, and you came from the mortgage world. What would you include in a 7 to 8 minute update? Year over year, days on market, under contract. What's the best way to demonstrate this is different from 2008?
There's a study out there right now that has a bunch of charts. Meg, I can get that to Joe and he can get it to you, that has some graphics, and I just can't think of where it came from. I have it and I put it in my story, but it has graphics that shows all how this is different from 2008. The fact is that how loose lending guidelines were in 2008 that caused these issues, we're in a whole different ballpark. And if you look at these charts, I firmly believe that housing is what caused the 2008 recession, and housing is going to be what props this one up. And I'll be so thrilled. But to answer with these charts, yes, but not year over year, but year over year, yes, days on market and under contract would be great. But you're also going to have to look at, a lot of it's going to be towards the lending. The unknown here is how unemployment is going to affect everything. Yeah. But I'll send this to Joe, and I think it'll be awesome for your webinar. I think it'd be really great.
Awesome. Thanks for that. All right. So Tim, what other numbers should we be tracking? So we know appointments. All right. What other numbers should we be tracking in our business, since you're the know your numbers guy?
Okay. Here's the number you're not going to hear a lot of people talk about. And I mean, no one ever talks about this, but I have a separate spreadsheet, and because CT even doesn't track this. So
CTE is commitment to excellence, for you guys that don't know it. That's a tool to run your business that Tim's been using for what, a decade almost, maybe less?
Man, it's been like 8 years.
Yeah, so a little less than a decade. So CTE, when he says that, is the acronym for commitment to excellence.
Yeah, iwantexcellence.com is the website. And Command has some of the features, but this is a little bit more in depth, and hopefully Command will be bringing out some more stuff that can do some of the same tools. But this one's important, y'all, and I'm so passionate about this one, because here's what happens, right? We make the calls. go on the appointments, and then all of a sudden we're not closed. And I saw this trend with people on some of the people on my team. And I'll give you an example. So we're working really hard, right? It can be deflating if you're going on appointments and nothing happens, right? It can also be deflating for a team leader to see your agent. I had an agent. She set 16 appointments her first month with me. She converted 0 of those.
16 appointments and then converted 0.
Yeah.
Okay.
Converted 0. And so I had this light, and this is some years past, and that person is no longer with us. But I had some real conversations with her, and what I found out is she was really good at connecting on the phone, absolutely horrendous at connecting on the human level, as going to that appointment and making that seller or buyer feel like their interests were number one versus her own. And it was at that time that I made the spreadsheet that I started realizing, man, I mean, we talk about the appointments we went on, but we never talk about the probability of, so I track from how many appointments you go on to a paycheck. And I call it the rolling 12. Yeah. And so no one ever talks about that. And I think in there, this is what tells me how well people do with long-term follow-up. So as well as I do, Joe, you may go on an appointment with someone, they may not be ready. Life changes, they wind up getting divorced now. They're holding off. They lost their job. They're going to sell in 3 years. They may sell in 6 months. They may sell in 3 months. But in between that initial appointment and whenever that contract is being signed, you've earned the right to stay in touch with this person for a long period of time. My top agent on my team, he'll probably sell about 70 homes this year. When he goes into an appointment, there is an 88% chance that we get a paycheck.
Okay.
88. I know the number. I've been watching it. It's been at 88. And so we know if we put, it's like handing the ball to Jordan in clutch time, what's going to happen, right? You're going to get the results. And so we've got some newer agents, and they're low. I mean, it's hard to track in a short amount of time. You need about 6 to 9 months worth of data to really start to get a good eyeball on it. But what I've learned there is this: make your calls, go on the appointments, don't fumble and quit doing the follow-up. Like if you connect with them, you have a really good relationship, and they're an A seller, and you don't call them back for 10 days, they may sense that you're not motivated or not hungry enough, and they pick someone else. Or, they had been looking at someone on Zillow, and the Zillow agent got them, and you call them back and they're in a contract. You drop the ball.
Right.
And so connecting, engaging, understanding your clients. So I love the fact that numbers can tell me how well that someone is doing from the appointment to close.
So Tim, this tool for you, and they can use whatever tool that they want, but for you, that it tracks their follow-up for them.
Yes. Yes.
So how many times they're following up on average, Tim, obviously you have a rock star that's, getting 88%, right?
8%.
But on average, what's the follow-up look like? Meaning how many times do they have to follow up to get the agreement signed?
We're seeing anywhere from, 10 to 12. But I have a lady I'm listing this week. It's in my system. Joe, I met her in 2013. She called the sign call. I'm listing her house in 2020. I have notes for 7 years. 7 years. And the point is, I'm relentless with follow-up. If you've registered if you come to me, like, we've earned the right to stay in a relationship till the house is sold. Like, that's just what I believe.
Right.
And I think we all should have that firm belief, because they are on websites. They're registering on realtor.com and Zillow while they're talking to you. It's happening. It's even your family members. It's happening. So we have to be super diligent. The enemy isn't other real estate agents. The enemy is the websites and all the other stuff. And so you want your piece of the pie, you got to fight for it sometimes. And so it's I really work really hard on teaching people to do lead follow-up.
Yeah. I've witnessed this. I mean, Tim, I know our numbers, and I know you. We've sent 3 deals down to you, right, over the course of the time that I've known you, and I know that you're relentless with follow up. So, what about the agents that are on this call? If you're saying, man, Tim, 10 to 12, right, like 10 to 12, what's the system behind that, Tim? And what's you use CTE, but give us some examples of what your system is for follow up, and maybe a tool that somebody can look at as far as implementing.
Cool. So Command is really making its dent in our world. We're using Commissions Inc. as our CRM,
Okay.
and it doesn't matter what CRM you're using, Command, Commissions Inc., Boomtown, any of those. I'm still using Top Producer.
Okay.
I have an $1,800 a month software that I'm paying for my team, and I'm using Top Producer, which costs me $35. It
Right.
tells me, so my system for follow-up is this. It's if I feel that they're an A client, that they get touched on Mondays and Thursdays. That's my hot leads.
What qualifies an A client? Is that, hey, I want to sell in the next 60 days, 90 days, 30 days?
If it's a seller within 60, if it's a buyer within 30.
Okay.
And so we may need to get that property ready. For sellers, it could take a little bit more time, but ask really simple questions, dig and find out the motivation, what's pushing them. And based off of that information is how we grade them. And so, a hot buyer seller gets touched twice a week, and that's hot. And if it's a warm 45-90, minimum once a week, and that's they're on an 8x8. We're touching them once a week. And, if it gets a little bit more long-term, and we've got a great relationship. Joe, you called me about selling your home, and I understand some things have changed in your world. Thanks for sharing that with me. If you don't mind, man, I'm just going to stay in touch. I really enjoyed talking to you. Let's just kind of stay in touch. I'll keep you posted on what's going on in the market. And, yeah, man, maybe we'll grab a beer sometime. How's that sound?
Yeah, that's your scripting is very relaxed, right? And just staying in touch.
That's it. So now Joe is going to be on my 36 touch, 33 touch per the MREA. We're doing 36. Joe, I like, and I know he's not going to sell, but I want to be there for him when he does. So I'm going to write him a handwritten note once a quarter. He's going to get our e-newsletter once a month. He's going to get a postcard once a month, and he's going to get a phone call every quarter. And Joe's cool enough. He'll get invited to our client events, and we have one a quarter on those. And so what that does is, because we've formed a relationship in the beginning, yet he may not be ready to sell, I am going to stay in touch with him long-term, and I want to be top of mind. We're in the battle for mind share.
Right.
This is all designed to win mind share, and we forget that sometimes. And so it's important. So that's what it looks like. So whatever you want to use, Command, I'm becoming a fan of. It's we're actually running our ads through Command now.
Yeah.
But that's another story. So hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it did. So Tim, we got just a couple minutes left here, 2 minutes. So advice. All right. You've been in the business. As long as you've been in the business, you've built a great, business. You're going to do 300 plus units in a down year. What advice do you have for the audience, as far as knowing their numbers?
Start at the beginning, and any of you can email me, admin@timhouk.com. But look at the things that make a difference. What are the things that make an impact and for real estate? And it's going to be knowing your numbers. It's going to be showing up every day, keeping your mindset there. But we as real estate agents we've become lead receivers due, I think, to the internet, the realtor.coms of the world, and all these websites. If you're on Boomtown, you get the leads. We don't do the old school tactics that got it successful. And so when you're in a down market, or we're going through COVID, whatever's going on, take this time and really start to hone your rituals, your routines and your habits that are going to breed success. And you have to be in touch with people. You need to be in front of them, on the phone, writing notes. I'm telling you, people still love handwritten notes. And look, I use technology at a high level. We didn't get into that phase, but I'm still doing the grassroots stuff, and it always works if people know that you actually care about them. And so that's my big piece of advice.
That's awesome, Tim. Tim, we can't thank you enough for your time today, man. So Houk is spelled Houk.
Yep.
Right. So the best way to reach you, if any of these people want to reach out to you and pick your brain a little bit, is your email. And will you say that again?
Yep. My email is admin, and I'll put it right here in the chat. admin@timhouk.com. And feel free. I'll share anything I have, any of my metrics, my spreadsheets, my tracking tools. I'll give y'all anything and everything I've got. And if you want to schedule a call sometime, let me know.
Appreciate you, Tim. You're the
Thanks,
man.
Joe.
Hey
Thanks,
guys,
Rob.
thanks for joining today. We're going to keep going with this. Tomorrow we have Bobby Howe. And you guys, you're going to want to tune into this. I just had a conversation with Bobby, and I actually had tears in my eyes a couple times. Bobby is a daughter of a real estate family. Mom was a real estate agent her entire life. And her mom actually took her own life 7 years ago. And Bobby's going to talk about that. She's going to open up about it. And her speaking is going to be, the topic is going to be lessons from the other side. You know, as realtors, we all know that we work hard and we run hard. And, you know, we have a lot of businesses and things like that that we can be doing. But at the end of the day, the importance of really the lesson of really taking self-care of yourself and how important that is. So tune in tomorrow for Bobby. It's going to be a very impactful conversation. Tim, I love you, bro. Thanks for joining us. You guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.